Okay, good morning, friends. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Haba. We're continuing in Seif Mishnah Berura. As many may know, this coming weekend is our annual campaign for Machon Maggid Harakiah. The best way you could help us out is if you set up a team page, or if you'd like to be mishtatef, it's charity.com/mmh25, or you could go to our site and connect that way. We're learning Mishnah Berura, Siman Kuf Lamed Hey, Sif Hey. Yesterday we learned that the minhag is to call up a Kohen after a Kohen with the Yisrael in between, meaning once you went through the Seder Aliyos, namely Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, or on Shabbos, Yisrael, you could call up a Kohen afterwards, and then you say, when you call up the second one, you say, Afal Pi Shehu Kohen. Then the Mechaber says, that is similarly the minhag with one Levi after another Levi. Okay, so that's the minhag when we have one Levi, you call up one Levi after another Levi. So the Mishnah Berura says, Sivkata Lamed Beis, right? So Loimar, Afal Gavda Aminam B'Siftes, even though we say in Siftes, the Levi Achar Levi Lo Yikra, that one Levi after another Levi you should not call. Hacha, over here, Kivan Shehifsag Yisrael Bein Tayim, since there's a Yisrael in between. V'gam Oimer, Afal Pi Shehu Levi, and you also said, even though he's a Levi, Leka Shum Chshasha V'chanal, there is no concern. So again, yesterday it was asked about why aren't we worried about nechnasim v'yotzim? So Mishnah Berura is saying that there are two reasons, two safeguards over here. Number one, because you have a Yisrael in between. Number two, because you called out Afal Pi Shehu Levi. So between those two things, the word will get out that this person is still a Levi. Okay. Now, until now, what the Mechaber was saying was that you could call up a Kohen after a Levi and after a Yisrael. We're not even talking about for Achroin or for Mafter. We're talking about, an additional Aliyah. Let's say during the week, for whatever reason, they're making a Hisafa, or on a Shabbos, you called up a Kohen, a Levi, Yisrael. You could call up a Kohen, provided that there's a Yisrael in between, and you say Afal Pishu Kohen. So comes the Rama, Haga, therefore it is permitted also to go up for mafter in such a situation. Says Mishnah Berura, mafter b'chi hai gavna retzolamer sheyazker gamkein shu kohen oy levi. So in other words, you could call up moed Berol ben Shmerol kohen mafter. I don't think you say afalpi. I think the afalpi is reserved for, let's say, one of the regular aliyos. But if you want to call up the kohen or levi for mafter or achroin, you just call him up for Kohen or Levi. Kohen or Levi. V'adin afilu im yirtza lasois. Okay, let's see further. V'im koirei mafter stam ein lachash lufgamai. If you call him up for mafter stam, we're not considered for pagam. Daharei loy masker shema. You're not saying his name. In other words, you could also call up the Kohen for mafter without saying his name. Either you say his name and you say Kohen, or you don't say his name. Some say not like the Mechaber. And this is what we do. That the ein likrois Kohen or Levi leminyan shiva. You don't call up a Kohen or Levi after their specific aliyah. Aval achar shenishlam haminyan yichem likrois Kohen or Levi. But if you want to make a hisafa, you could. V'chein noagim b'medinas elu. This is the minhag in our Medina. If there's a pressing situation, you have a simcha, and you have 1,000,000 Bali Simcha, and you have too many Kohanim to deal with, and if you don't give the Kohen their Aliyah, then they're going to turn you into a Rashis Hagez or something. I don't know what that Kohen's going to do. So you'd be allowed to do Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, Afal Pishu Kohen, Afal Pishu Levi, Yisrael. But if you could navigate it by giving the Kohanim Mafter and Achroin, that's best. The minhag is not to call them up Laminyan Shiva. However, b'makom tzorech udchak, you could be samech on the mechaber. Says the Mishnah Berura, Siv Katan, Lamed Daled, Kohen or Levi. Meaning, Yesh Omrim, that we don't call up a Kohen or a Levi, Leminyan Shiva. Says the Mishnah Berura, Kohen or Levi, Lamed Daled, V'adin Afil Mirza, Lasos Seder Chadash. The same thing would be if you want to make a new order. The Hainu Kohen Levi Yisrael. Gamkein also Shita. So according to the Shita, this would be aser to go through another round of Kohen Levi Yisrael. Kivan Shu B'Soich Shiva Kruam, since it's within the 7 Aliyos. Kasva Poiskim de Betainis Lo Yale Kohen or Levi Lamafter. On a Tainis, a Kohen or Levi should not go up to Mafter. Shehu Minyan Akruim, because the Mafter is Minyan Akruim. Shamafter Shlishi Vim Ein Sham Yisrael. Hayodea Lahafter Makrin Acherim Oisai. If there's no Yisrael who knows how to read the Haftarah, then somebody should feed him the words. The Sharatzion brings that the Chayadim says that if you don't have someone who could read the Haftarah, you could call up a Kohen. The Sharatzion disagrees. The Mafter Shlishi, you can't call up a Kohen Laminyan Shlishi, for sure, according to everyone. Okay. So there is an opinion that we don't call up a Kohen or a Levi Laminyan Shiva, says Mishnah Berura, V'uhadin b'yamtav l'chamishi. So to on Yom Tov to the Minyan Chamishi, but the Evadim Tov a Kar LaKohen or Levi be'emtza Minyan Akruim. If let's say he made a mistake and they called up a Kohen or a Levi in middle of the 5 on Yom Tov or middle of the 7 on Shabbos, im efshar lahachlif b'mafter or ba'achroin. If you could instead give the Kohen or the Levi mafter or achroin, yamtin bateva, let him stand at the bima, v'yikru acharim kaimer, let call up someone else in his place, v'hu yala la'achroin or l'mafter. Meaning, let's say you have a guest, and you remember his name, you just didn't remember he's a Kohen, and you call him up, Ya Moed Pinchas ben Feivel Revi'i, and it turns out he's a Kohen. He should go up, he should stand at the bima, wait there until Mafter or Achron. Vim I Evshar, and if that's not possible, Kivan Sha'ala, once he went up, Lo Yered, V'ivarech, U'chumash Masayim Harama, like the Rama concludes, V'makam Tsayrech, if there's a need, Udachak, Yesh Lismai Chasar Rishayna, you could rely on the first svara. V'chein noyagim b'medinois elu, namely that we do not call up a Kohen or a Levi leminyan shiva. Ulevush kasav dekahayom afilu la'achar shiva kruam einon onagim l'kroisan. V'levush, you see the Rama is mashma that after the 7 you can make a hoisafa and call up a Kohen or a Levi to the 8th aliyah or 9th aliyah, even if it's not Achrein or Mafter. The Lavush says nowadays, even after the 7th Aliyah, we're not noyeg to call them out, only to the Achrein or for Mafter. V'chein hetiku sharei Achreinim. Likewise, the other Achreinim bring. V'hatam isa b'Lavush. The reason is we find in Lavush, D'loi chashinon ba'Achrein lifgam. The reason why we could give a Kohen Achrein but not a different aliyah is because if he gets to Achrein, we're not concerned. People are going to be poigim his kahuna ki adarabba. Badoros halalu, in our generations, mechashvin Achrein choshev mikulam lefi shehu masayim haparsha. In our generations, the Achrein is considered the most choshev aliyah. V'lagado shabat tzibur karein la'achrein, and for the gado of the tzibur we call up Achrein. Even though the mafter goes after him. Still, there's a hefsek between the achron and the mafter with kaddish. And even the mafter, we're not makbed if he's a kayin. Because it's like the beginning of the kriya. So the achron could be a kohen and the mafter could be a kohen. Even if the achron was also a kohen, we're not worried if the mafter is a kohen. We're not concerned for kohen achar kohen. Kivan shahakadosh mafsik beineim, since there was a kaddish interruption between them. Ad kan l'shayin halavush. Umikamakom, nevertheless, b'makom tzarech kagoin sheyesh shnei chasanim. Let's say there are 2 chasanim. And they have accompaniment for each chasan. They have mechutanim, and each family has kohen malavim. then what you do is cholkinas haparsha l'shnayim. What do you do? Mitchila koyin zayin gavri l'echad. First, you call up 7 aliyos for one. And then, v'achakach koyin l'chasan hasheni v'shoshvinav. Then you call up the second chasan and his shoshvinan. This seems to be going like what the Ramah said, that ein likrois koyin levi leminyan shiva, but not going with the lavush, that our minhag is only to give them maftir and achroin. So in other words, there are 3 levels. The first level is only to give, the best way to do it is the lavush. The lavush says you only give koyin, maftir, and achroin. If that's not possible, don't call up a koyin leminyan shiva. After leminyan shiva, after the 7, you could call up a koyin, even if it's not maftir or achroin. And then b'shas hadchak, after you call up koyin levi Yisrael, you could call up again koyin levi Yisrael, and you say afal pishu koyin.
What's after the shiva if it's not achroin? What else is there?
There's the 8th aliyah, the 9th aliyah, the 10th aliyah.
Means the last as opposed to another, just another?
Yes. In some shuls,
They call 3 of them.
they're notorious for haisafais. Some shuls are notorious for haisafais.
So what are those actually called if they're not achroin? They're mini and...
Yeah, what do you call them? The shul that I davened in last week, but I wouldn't go back to. But there are shuls that are notorious for that. And you could call whatever you want. Shmini, Tishi'i, Asiri.
They call it up as achroin, right? So it's not what the halacha is calling achroin, apparently.
I don't think they call each one achroin. I mean, it's been a while. Back in the day, I think they used to do it more often. Back in the day, Tercha de Tzibura meant if davening takes more than 4 hours. Today, Tercha de Tzibura is if it takes more than 2 hours. Yeah, I don't know.
But that's anything. There's no number. No number. No number.
Yeah, they call up.
There's no number.
Yeah, they don't just call up. But umikol makom b'makom tzarech. Okay, so let's see. What about Simchas Torah? Because Simchas Torah, they call up Kohanim, Leviim, and it's not necessarily at the designated time. Kasu achreinim, the Simchas Torah shemitzian shloishes Sefer Torah. Simchas Torah, where they call up 3 Sefer Torah, chom liyos shloishes Kohanim. They could all be 3 Kohanim. They could all be Kohanim. Echad chasan Torah, v'echad chasan bereishis, v'echad maftir, and one is maftir. One chiddush I learned from here is that it's incorrect to say chasan Torah. It's chasan. The word is davak, so it should be menukad with 2 patachs. Okay. Kivan, why could you call each one up as even if they're koyin? Kivan should call echad koyer b'sefer acher. Each one is getting a different sefer. Av Rosh Chodesh Teves shechal b'Shabbos. Rosh Chodesh Teves that falls out on Shabbos sheish gam kin shlosh svarim. Oz b'sefer rishon shekarn by Hashavua in likrois l'koyin lebasayf. Don't call up a koyin to the last aliyah of the first sefer. Af im hoisifu v'kara b'yoser mishiva. Even if you're going to call up more than 7. Why? Because we're not finishing the kriya with the sefer. Hamashlim hu b'sefer hasheni shekarin by Parshas Rosh Chodesh. The mashlim is getting called up in the second sefer Torah that you call the Parsha of Rosh Chodesh. Rak b'sefer hasheni shabay mashlim ha'achrein. Only the kohen could get called up to the second sefer Torah that we finish the achrein. Now, why can't you call up the guy to the first sefer according to the Ramah that ein likrois kohen or levi leminyan shiva? This is no longer leminyan shiva. I guess this would be going according to the levush that bizman hazeh ein noyeg in likroisan ela la'achrein. So this is not achrein l'chayra. I don't know why he says not to call up the kohen. I guess that would be going according to the levush. Yeah, you hear what I'm saying? Because according to the Ramah, you're allowed to call up a kohen or a levi as long as it's not leminyan shiva. Uvesefer shel acharav shekarin b'shel Chanukah lemafter rashon likros l'kohen liyos achrein v'gam kohen lemafter. In other words, it sounds like in the second Sefer, which is Achroin, you could call up a Kohen or Levi, and in the third Sefer, which is the Sefer of Chanukah, you could call up for Mafter a Kohen to be Achroin. So I guess Uvasefer Shal Achroin Shkam Shachan Lamafter Rashon Likros LeKohen Lios Achroin. I guess that's going back on the second Sefer, V'gam Kohen Lamafter, and a Kohen on the third Sefer, but not a Kohen at the end of the first. But again, I think that's going according to the Lavush. Yeah, we're going to hold it over here for Mishnah Berura. We'll pick it up tomorrow.
Recording stopped.